Welcome back. I'm Andrea Mitchell in London, sitting in for Rachel Maddow, who is off tonight. In a moment, we'll hear more from Rachel's interview with former Secretary of State Colin Powell, including his response to allegations that top U.S. officials knew that innocent people were being held indefinitely at the Guantanamo Bay prison. First, though, news today of America's policy of detaining prisoners overseas. A federal judge has ruled that 3 non-Afghan prisoners being held at Bagram Air Force Base in Afghanistan do have the right to challenge their detention in American courtrooms, a decision counter to arguments from both the Obama and Bush administrations. If that ruling stands, it could mean major changes for President Obama's detention policy, even as his administration works to shut down the prison at Guantanamo Bay. Colin Powell was Secretary of State when the prisoners from the war in Afghanistan first began arriving at the prison. Here is Rachel's conversation with General Powell about Guantanamo and the decisions that landed people there.
Your former Chief of Staff, Colonel Wilkerson, said that battlefield vetting was poor before sending people to Guantanamo. And he has said, made a little bit of a splash recently, he has said that senior U.S. government officials understood the implications of that essentially Guantanamo was quite full of people who were basically innocent and should be released. Were you one of the senior officials who was aware of that?
I was aware that people were being picked up on the battlefield, and there was sufficient cause at the point of pickup when they were interviewed by the GIs or the Afghans who turned them over to us, or Pakistanis who turned them over to us. There was sufficient cause for them to be detained, either in Afghanistan or sent to Guantanamo Bay. Guantanamo Bay was a good solution initially because it was separate from the United States and we could sort our way through these people. But over time, it became clear that many of the people we picked up in Guantanamo Bay, we really couldn't link them to terrorist activity, and as a result, many of them have been released. We're down to a number of 200 or so, but at one time it was up to 700 or 800. Well, where'd they go? They were released over time as any intelligence value they might have was determined, and no more intelligence value go. We also picked up teenagers who, after a while, these people can't be responsible for anything or guilty of anything. We picked up one gentleman who was 93 years old who ended up there. And we said, fellas, come on, we got to send this guy back. And so we worked that population down over time. But
was there initial resistance to those claims? Was there an internal debate about whether the 13-year-old boy, whether the 93-year-old man should be released?
Yes, and we pressed on it. And there were discussions about these issues, sometimes down to the individual case. And ultimately, cases as obvious as that, the old man and the teenagers, they were resolved and they were sent back home.
Who was fighting to keep those people in?
There were people who wondered whether or not they still had some intelligence value, even if they were 93 years old or 13. Did they know something about it, or were they involved? And it was not a trivial matter to make sure that if somebody did know something about it, you find out about it, regardless of age or anything else. Because you have to remember the post-9/11 environment. America and its leaders wanted to make sure that something like that didn't happen again. But we found over time that a lot of people had been swept up, and that you couldn't pass the test of them actually being combatants or a danger if they were released, and so they were released. And now we're down to a much smaller population of a couple of hundred, and we'll have to work our way through those. I, for one, have advocated the closing of Guantanamo, not only since I left the position as secretary, but while I was secretary, because I thought there were other ways to handle this in our civilian court system, with military courts-martial, or through the federal court system. And I thought we were paying too high a price for Guantanamo in terms of the public opinion around the world we were losing. And frankly, the moral basis of our fight against terror was being undercut by Guantanamo and all the people who could point to Guantanamo and say, is this justice? People have been there 4, 5, 6, now 7 years. How long do you plan to keep them without doing something about it? And so I have always been one for doing something about Guantanamo, and now President Obama says he's going to have it closed by the end of the year. It doesn't mean they're all going to get released. Some of them are really, really bad. Well, let's put them in our court system. Yeah. We got 2 million people in jail in this country. They're the highest incarceration rate in the world. All of them had lawyers. All of them had access to the writ of habeas corpus, and courts found them guilty and put them in jail. I'm confident that even although evidence may be not adequate or even tainted in some cases, as we know, I have confidence in our federal court system.